Anyway, okay, so my name is Ramy Habeeb. I'm the director of Kutab Arabiya. I started it about 5 years ago, and I must say that I really enjoy spending time with people like Peter Collins, because when he speaks to me, I just think he's like a space-age astronaut from the future, because I know that we talk a lot about tablets and whatnot, and I'd like to show you an Egyptian tablet. So we are kind of in a different realm and in a different era, stuff like that. I'd like to donate this to the Dutch Foundation of Literature, so we don't forget where we come from. This is an actual used on a Guden press. I found it in old Cairo, a market called Khana Khalili, and they have a bunch of them. And this one's a menu selling falafel sandwiches. So, okay, so it's interesting seeing what you are talking about in digital publishing and all the bells and whistles and the ability to highlight a certain passage and tweet it and whatnot. But the reality is that for emerging economies, e-publishing is quite simply putting a facsimile of the image onto it's about making the content available. We're not at the stage where the bells and whistles are a part of it, and this works for us and against us, unfortunately. So I'll just give you a quick overview of us. Our mission was, we started Kutab Arabiya in 2005, and our mission was to distribute Arabic in Arabic, not translations and nothing else, because we felt that why should we start supplying translations for works that the locals in which it was intended for have not had an opportunity to read it. And part of our motivation for starting Kutab Arabiya was that we did a study to see what the average distribution in Egypt was, and we discovered that the average distribution in Egypt is 5 kilometers from the physical publishing house. In other words, what people could carry on their backs. So now with the internet, you can be everywhere and do, everything. And so initially we thought to ourselves, we played the, because I'm in it for the money, we played the classic entrepreneur trick. And the trick was very simple. Like, we were going to open up an Amazon, and it was going to be individual sales. I'll sell you 2 books, I'll sell you 3 books, and on the estimated 40 million Arabs online, presumably literate, I realize that pictures, you don't need to read pictures, but the idea was that, 40 million Arabs, if we sold each Arab like 3 books a year, I could buy an island in Tahiti. But it didn't quite work out like that, and we actually had to switch our model entirely, and we started to do a subscription-based model. And this is something that I think for a non-fiction conference holds a lot of relevance, because what we did was we aggregated a vast amount of Arabic content. We have 2 collections. One is about 3,000 books, and the other one's about 4,500 books that we sell to universities and libraries. And up until Tuesday, we're completely self-funded. We never took any money or anything like that. And Tuesdays, because the revolution started, I might need to ask for money, Richard. So we'll see what we can do. Another interesting fact is that despite the fact of there being 320 million Arabs, our biggest market is actually the U.S. So there is kind of some obvious reasons for that. One, U.S. academic institutes tend to have a lot of funding to, the whole nefarious history that is going on between the U.S. and the Arab world, in which, there is a huge interest in the U.S. to understand where Arabs are coming from, what they're thinking, what's going on in their minds, and what better way to understand that than to read their books and kind of like get that sense from there. And our subscribers are the big academic institutes, the Harvards and Yales and Stanfords and Georgetowns, and not Rochester though. Yeah, we need to talk. So this is what we do, and for the Dutch industry, there is an opportunity there to kind of aggregate, especially the nonfiction, and kind of offer it on a subscription-based models to institutes and so on to the reading community. I mean, there is that opportunity. It requires you all to work together. You all seem pretty amicable, so it might work. So it's a thought. Now, I'd like to completely shift gears for a minute and talk about the state of Arab publishing just very quickly. The Arab publishing industry, if you take a look at where we're at today, is quite comparable to the UK publishing industry of the 1860s. And I mean this very seriously. Like, I'm not, other comments I was trying to be funny, but this I'm actually quite serious about. The reason why is because we have no books in print catalog. And the reason why I put us at the 1860s is because it was around 1867 or 8 in which the first book in print catalog in the UK emerged. And this is kind of like the fundamental step in emerging economies in order to bring an emerging economy publishing industry from kind of a developing industry into a modern industry. It's not really the standards, it's not ISBN, compliance. It's not even developing standards like, Big Standard or BISEG or NUR. And by the way, on a side note, I was at a conference and I asked people if they knew what EPUB was, and the response was a virtual place to have a virtual beer. So which suits the Arab culture quite well. The other element of the Arab publishing industry that's interesting is censorship. I mean, I know that in the West, and particularly, censorship is quite strongly condemned, but you have to kind of look at censorship in emerging economies with a different perspective. It's not always fair to judge the censors from the same perspective that you would judge your own country's censors. I mean, especially when looking at European history and U.S. history, where, censorship was part of the culture not less than 100 years ago. So, you have to understand that when censorship occurs in the Middle East, there's three kinds. There's state censorship, in which the government is trying to, prevent certain ideas from becoming popular. And then there's self-censorship, which is, I know that this is going to get me in trouble, so I'm not going to write it. But then there's also another kind of censorship, which is just a censorship based on culture and not understanding that this is wrong. And then one example I'll give is that we type our books because there's no OCR. And so there was a book about Egypt in, I forget what year, 1967 I think, or 68, in which the author went through all the headlines and said that this has an effect on modern-day Egypt. And one of the headlines is about the effigy of the Virgin Mary appearing. So, because typists are just going away really fast, sometimes they'll skip a line and not really realize that they skipped the line. But this particular typist had skipped 3 pages. So when we looked at the 3 pages skipped, it was about the effigy of the Virgin Mary. And when we called him in to see what happened, his response was very innocent and very like he had done something good. It was just not true, so I didn't include it.